Good morning. Okay, so just a couple things. First of all, I would like to welcome to the stage Gerald Pearson to give some opening remarks as our sponsor for this session.
Good morning and welcome this snowy, frosty day outside that I wasn't expecting. I'd like to congratulate the Chamber, all the volunteers on another successful show here. I know the weather hampered some stuff, but still a great turnout. Lots of good vibes. I always find really good vibes when we come here. Anyway, Rally's very proud to be able to sponsor whatever we can here. We work around the community, so we really like to give back. So I'm not going to keep anybody here, keep it moving along. So enjoy the rest of the show. And again, great job on this show to all our chamber and volunteers. Thanks.
Okay, so I am very pleased to be your chair for the Insight session. I wanted to give a couple of remarks, but unfortunately I live in Grand Falls, so yesterday I found myself stuck at home in a snowstorm with 2 small children fighting for my life and my sanity. So I'm just going to wing it a little bit. So I've been around this industry for a long time, basically since I was born. I'm a 4th generation miner. And I will say it's a very exciting time to be a part of this industry. I know that everyone can feel it. So in my role at the college, I am very, very privileged and thankful to be able to work with companies across the mining spectrum the cycle, who are really working, in exploration and in operations, sustainability, just efficiency. And honestly, there's a special place in my heart for exploration. It's just a very exciting time to be part of that. So certainly I'm going to hand this over to Amanda, who is the absolute expert in what's going on in Mining Industry NL. She is the Executive Director of Mining NL. So Amanda, if you could please join us.
Thank you, Janelle, and good morning, everyone. For those of you that have stuck around for the, those lights are really bright. Any chance to dim those a little? Because I actually can't see. Thank you. Before I begin, I actually want to just acknowledge this is National Volunteer Week. So based in that, in the spirit of volunteerism, the, the theme for this year is Ignite Volunteerism. And I really think that the group that have hosted this event over the last 3 years have certainly really exemplified the hospitality of Newfoundland and Labrador. So I want to give thanks to the Gander and Area Chamber of Commerce, to the town of Gander, and certainly all of the industry and community volunteers that have come together to deliver on this event. So thank you. Now let's see. So I've been in the role as Executive Director with Mining Industry NL for about 2 years now. I'm approaching 2 years the end of this month. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do, why Newfoundland and Labrador, and certainly emphasizing the why and people knowing their why. I'm going to talk about critical minerals, mining benefits to Newfoundland and Labrador, as well as how do we continue to unlock strategic potential in this province. So in terms of who we are an industry membership-driven association. We were established in 1994, so a little over 30 years. And in many respects, as an organization, we are experiencing a rebirth. And we're reimagining what, as an industry association, what our role should be and how we can best support industry. Our mandate is very much focused in advocacy, in representation, in outreach and education, and really promoting the hell out of Newfoundland and Labrador as a top-tier mining investment jurisdiction. So how do we do that, and what are some of the services that we do? So certainly advocacy and representation is at the very top of our list. That includes things like even just my presence being here today with public relations, networking and events, speaking on behalf of industry, interfacing with government, with decision makers, with leaders. from a strategic lens, a strategic big picture lens for, on behalf of industry, building strategic partnerships and collaboration with all various stakeholders involved in supporting the sector, policy engagement, international trade, investment, and promotions, as well as we have a number of industry committees that we pull together depending on the particular items that we're discussing. We are governed by a board of directors, many of which were here actually today at this conference. Board chair is Jamie Powell. Jamie's here. He's up in the back, so I'm going to single him out. And also who was here over the last couple of days was Justin Hewitt with Stuart McKelvey, Jared Saunders with Newfound Gold, and Crispin Pike with Firefly. So just to kind of name some of the directors that you might have engaged with over the past several days. But really as an organization, you know, we support the full value chain and the full ecosystem of the mineral resources sector in the province. So that starts with geoscience. We look at mineral exploration and prospecting, the developers and mine development, the operators and producers, but also the service and supply sector. And I had mentioned we do that through partnerships. We work with a variety of partners, these in particular with our government partners when we may advocate against government, but in a public sense, we certainly come together to ensure that we have, in some respects, a common voice that's in the best interest of industry. So just to dig a little deeper into some of the areas in which how we support industry, global investment and promotions is incredibly important. We know this is a top-tier investment jurisdiction, and we want to ensure that we're providing opportunities for projects and our explorers and developers to help enable them to put an investment focus on these projects. So we've done that over the last number of years through programs with PDAC, Canada's Atlantic Edge. Many companies who presented here today certainly would have participated in those events. AMEBC, there's been programming, Resourcing Tomorrow. These programs are supported through ACOA, the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agencies, as well as the provincial government. And we come together through this pan-Canadian, really mining and exploration group. I'm the industry co-chair, and a colleague with ACOA, Mike Howley, is the government co-chair. And through the ATIGA initiative, the Atlantic Trade Investment Growth Strategy, we come together and support a number of activities to help profile projects in the province. Advocacy and representation takes on very varying levels of engagement. I've got a lot of slides to get through, so I'm going to move through some of this quickly. Over the last 2 years, the trade and tariff situation has been concerned to many of our operators and even the juniors from a procurement sense. Land accessibility concerns continues to be a concern for our members and our greater membership. And recently, the potential threat of a national marine conservation area on the south coast potentially impacted projects, and that was we really came together and did a substantial focused advocacy on that particular issue, and I am pleased to say that I think with the new provincial government coming on board and withdrawing from that MOU, I think it was in industry's best decision and the best decision for the province. Workforce development, labor market challenges, we're involved in those sorts of activities, and even how the enablers to that, being aware that trying to fill that talent gap with certainly development projects in the province, how do we address that from varying levels? So recognizing that in Atlantic Canada, the absence of a mining engineering program with Dalhousie closing its over 100-year program, and last spring the last graduating class. Now that's starting to be filled by the emergence of a new program, but we've been advocating to Memorial within Atlantic Canada. Newfoundland and Labrador is the larger contributor to the mineral resources sectors. So we'd like to see our post-secondary institutions stepping up and being really initiating these sorts of programs to meet industry's needs. Early November, we did an industry roundtable, bringing together about 40 leaders from across a diverse cross-section throughout industry, and we've put together a draft report, and we'll be moving that forward as we approach government and working together with our stakeholders to advance some of those concerns on behalf of industry. We developed, as a part of labor market partnerships, we created a education and outreach program. It's called Mining Bright Futures. It takes a cycle approach, which is really represented by the icons that you see across the top of the logo. We received $750,000 from the provincial government. It's the Labor Market Partnership Fund. And as a part of that initiative, it was for 2 years for us to develop programming, hands-on, K-12 programming, STEM-related resources and kits. It's student-focused, it's learner-centered, and with the philosophy, the educational philosophy that hands-on is minds-on, and students learn by doing. So it's everything from talking about rocks and minerals to what's in your everyday things, and it's hands-on activities. We take a cycle approach where we do talk about opportunities throughout the various stages in the resource development cycle. And since launching this, we initially launched a pilot program in Bay Verte of June of last year. And since then, we've had really, I think it's been a positive reach. We've had about over 800 students across the island in particular participate. We had hoped to deliver programming in Labrador in conjunction with the Lab West MinEx, but weather also was not our friend, and we couldn't get into the schools and make that work, so we'll be visiting back in the fall. But so far we've had a reach of 845 students and 35 teachers and a number of schools, and these were really jurisdictions that were strategically chosen, knowing that there's significant activity in advanced stage projects in the area. So kind of moving on into why, and sometimes I go into a little more detail with these slides, but when you look at big picture, and I realize that the audience here is maybe not always the audience who would appreciate some of these slides, so bear with me. But when you look at Newfoundland and Labrador, we really have exceptional geological heritage or geodiversity. We have the province itself in Labrador. We have some of the oldest dated rocks on the planet, going back to 3.8 billion years. In terms of our area, our physical size, we're about 450,000 square kilometers, but with a population of around a little over 500,000 people. So we almost have one person for every square kilometer. We have 29,000 kilometers of coastline, accessible coastline. So this is speaking to our why. Why are we underexplored? Why is there opportunities for growth here in Newfoundland and Labrador? And I know my talk is coming at the end of the session, and maybe this might have been a better talk to sort of set up some of the other project updates, but we have a history of mineral resource stewardship, generational mining expertise and experience, especially when you look to jurisdictions like the Bay Verte Peninsula with 150 years of mining history, 70 years in Labrador West. But yet, when you look back, and I'm going to just go academic for just a couple of slides here, the theory of plate tectonics started in the 1960s, which really transformed and revolutionized geoscience, talking about moving plates, destroying oceans, ancient oceans, mountain building. And it was really that testing ground and the proving ground on the west coast in the Bay of Islands that brought about and kind of proved this theory. And then, but why am I talking about this here at a mining conference? It's the implications that it had for the mining and mineral resources sector. And Hank Williams, who was a professor at Memorial, developed a map, and this actually original hand-colored map still hangs in the walls of the Earth Sciences Department to this day. And in 1978, he published this map, and it's probably one of the most significant maps. And it really brought about these new ideas. And instead of looking at individual rock units or lithologies, we started to think about big tectonic assemblages. And it really set the stage for one of the most cited papers in the Canadian Journal of Earth Sciences, and really brought to light these sorts of opportunities that the Appalachian mountain belts in Canada, traveling down through the United States, brought to light. But it was the fact that the impact that it had in how we search and how we explore for mineral deposits, which was really a paradigm shift in thinking at that time. And the fact that this province really was a catalyst that brought that to life, I think is really quite significant. And you kind of brought into this idea that Newfoundland, the island of Newfoundland I'm referring to, should be the 8th wonder of the world, with the western edge, being the edge of North America and the right, and the eastern part once being a part of North America. And then we have all of this crumpled up remains of this ancient ocean floor of Iapetus Ocean laying in the middle between essentially North America and Africa. So that really speaks to our why. So when I hear, Stephen Stairs up here talking about, looking at areas that really haven't been explored before and following trends, especially in the central part of Newfoundland, it kind of speaks to that why. The Tilt Cove mine being the first mine that was ever produced in the province, base metals in central Newfoundland giving rise, with these VMS deposits, but it just speaks again to the opportunities and of course the impacts on global mineral exploration and mining. The fact that this province is host to really exceptional mineral types and world-class ore deposits. And again, that geodiversity, that diversity of these mineral deposits. And I'm not going to get technical, you've heard the technical talks, but VMS deposits, these volcanic massive sulfide deposits, which Duck Pond, Tilt Cove, Buckins, I mean, these numbers of like 16 metric tons, and these percentages, 14.5% zinc, 7.5% lead and copper, and like these are, world-class numbers. So when you hear Gus yesterday in his talk talking about 2% copper, I mean, these are really high values of mineralization. So I just kind of wanted to take the moment to sort of really emphasize the significance of these deposits. And since the 19th century, we have been an important source of base metals, and active exploration projects today continue with financing, able to push sort of that needle. And to open up areas that hadn't been really explored before, and continue to need investment to drive that exploration. And it just goes back to, again, this idea of here in the province that we have this significant mining heritage and legacy, but it goes back to that use of the land and back to the maritime archaic Indians and the indigenous knowledge that came with early land use. Rama chert being used for tools and weapons, and polished stones to the fleur-de-lis quarry again on the Baysville Peninsula. But this was, the first evidence that we have of pre-contact mining, really quite significant. And then when you look at, this is my second mention of the UNESCO World Heritage Site with Gross Mourne because of the theory of plate tectonics on the west coast. But, and then on the northern peninsula, when you look at Lanza Meadows, again, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But this is the first example in the modern world, in the Americas, of smelting, of iron smelting, of metallurgical processing here in this province. So I just kind of wanted to take a moment, because I thought this was an important platform to do so, just to kind of remind people as to the why, and how people can stand up here and say we're underexplored, and to be able to make those sorts of big statements. These are the reasons. These are some of the reasons why. Moving ahead to sort of modern day critical minerals, Will, with his talk with Mining Industry Human Resources, put up this slide yesterday. But Canada publishes critical minerals lists. Jurisdictions around the world publish critical minerals list. Japan, the United States, the UK, the United States updated their list just in December, and prior it was 50 critical minerals, now it's at 60, and they broke out some of the rare earth elements. Instead of just calling them rare earth elements, they actually broke out some of those individual elements. But in 2024, Canada made its last iteration. They made 3 additions, one of which was tremendous benefit to this province. It was the addition of high purity iron ore, and that also involves significant advocacy from industry and government working together. Here's just a quick list of what that looks like. I've added the provincial flag just so you can get a sense of big picture. We have 27 currently. We're aware of 27 occurrences of Canada's 34 critical minerals. But of course, we have actually 34 critical minerals listed on some of the other jurisdictions around the world of their 50. Canada had initially with its critical minerals strategy was published really in 2022, and then I think the version that they have now in September of 2024 is the one that's referenced as the most updated version. The province published a critical minerals strategy in November of 2023. And then when you look at the G7 summit and some of the language coming out of their critical minerals action plans, again, it really just speaks to, because this language around critical minerals have been very topical and certainly very popular in the last couple of years, but it really recognizes the significance of critical minerals as the building blocks to our digital and energy security. And the point I want to make here from an advocacy lens is that when we're talking about labor market challenges, we need to see alignment with federal and provincial critical minerals plans, so there's an alignment with our post-secondary institutions, so that if these are strategic assets and interest from a government lens, then we'd like to be able to see that follow through in activities in particular to labor market areas, and I'm going to speak to that as I move on through some of these slides. So when you look specifically at the benefits of mining to this province, these figures that I have were published in the most recent provincial budget last spring, so we'll see what's in store for us in the next week or two when the new budget comes down. But mining is the second largest contributor to GDP. We're at 9.3%. We're second to oil extraction at 15.4%. Third is construction. Now this is in the goods producing sector. Why is she throwing all these numbers at us? When you put these together, when you think about when you add up mining and oil extraction, that's about a quarter of the provincial GDP. And you throw in construction with that. And when I talked to Rhonda Neary, who's the CEO of the Construction Association, most of their work for their members from a procurement sense is related to extractive resources projects. So that's over 33% of GDP is really coming from the extractive resources sector, and our industry significantly contributes to that. So I'm involved with the Atlantic Economic Panel, and I've been the mining voice for that group. So when we're looking at ways in Atlantic Canada to push the needle to productivity and to raise GDP, of course, I'm waving my hand saying, mining, mining, mining. Let's, the world needs these critical minerals, and we've got the right geology, we've got the right deposits, so let's help put systems in place to enable and to unlock that potential. This province, from the Fraser Institute, publishes an annual rankings list. I'm sure many of you are aware of this. In 2024, so not the one that recently dropped, we were 8th on the list of the top 10 mining jurisdictions in the world. In 2025, we did slightly drop out of that top 10 down to 14th place for investment attractiveness. I've just got some comparables there as to how we stack up to the other Atlantic provinces. But when you look at Newfoundland and Labrador, our mineral shipments are it can varies from year to year, but we're about $5 to $6 billion in mineral shipments. Nova Scotia and New Brunswick combined is about $500 million. So just to kind of give that sense of scale, and there is no mineral resources sector in PEI. The industry is just not there, but we also had a slight dropping this year in policy perception. In 2024, we were ranked 6th, and we dropped to 7th this year. And I circle back to some of the comments I made before from land accessibility. When investment flows, and investors will go where they can take $1 and make it 2. I mean, it's really that simple. So we're competing for other jurisdictions around the world for investment. But there are things within our sphere of influence and things which are not. But from a policy perception, that is something that is, holistically in our sphere of influence. So we want to make sure that this jurisdiction is, we can make it as strong as possible and most attractive as possible from an investment lens. And if investors don't see a pathway to development, then investment is going to flow elsewhere. So just in terms of the mining benefits, we've got 11 producing mines in the province. It was 5.3 billion last year when it came to mineral shipments. The projections for this year is 6 billion. There's 3 processing facilities. There's 3 developing projects. That's by government's definition of developing projects. And 11 different mineral commodities which are produced. On this slide, I'm just going to focus more on the right-hand side, and again, just those exploration expenditures. Much to the work and the activity of the projects that you've been hearing about for the last day. It's really sparked this exploration expenditures that we really haven't seen before in this province, and we haven't seen the claim staking that we have really since the initial Voisey's Bay discovery in the early 90s. But in the last, since 2021, up to inclusive of forecasts for 2025, we're talking about combined exploration expenditures of $1.168 billion. So in the last 4 years, we've seen over $230 million come into this province in exploration alone. And exploration is almost like a subset of its own throughout the bigger mineral resource development cycle. This is new money. This is foreign direct investment which comes into the province. It's not recycled money. It's not recycled infrastructure or capital works projects through government stimulus funding. So that's an important message that I repeatedly pass along to our elected officials. But if you want to continue to see that exploration flourish and continue in the province, we need to make sure that we kind of setting up the right conditions to enable that and to support that. So mining benefits to Newfoundland and Labrador, I just got to kind of focus on just a couple projects, but the high purity iron ore, obviously that discovery happened in the late 1800s. Newfoundland and Labrador, these numbers, I mean, when you really think about them, they're quite astounding. We're talking about 34%, over a third of Canada's high purity iron ore comes from this province. Very similar story to Voisey's Bay, Vale's base metals project, the Voisey's Bay project, nickel, copper, cobalt. 27% of Canada's nickel comes from Newfoundland and Labrador. 43% of Canada's cobalt comes from Newfoundland and Labrador. And we're certainly an emerging gold district which is obviously the premise which brings us here, I think, to central Newfoundland. But to see Equinox Gold, who published their Q1 results yesterday, and production of over 27,000 ounces. It's really quite spectacular to see this level of activity happening in the province. So I'd mentioned I'm coming towards, somewhat towards the end of my slides, but producing mines, so like I said, 11 producing mines, Vale, Tata, Rio Tinto, Tacora, all iron ore projects, Cemex, which is a aggregates producer, Mexican company, one of the largest actually in the world. I was just actually in Croatia and Split, and as we were driving into the city, I see a big Cemex gypsum facility, and I was like, oh, that's a name that we recognized here. Equinox Gold, obviously Atlas with their gypsum project, Barcan, High Point, Trinity Performance Minerals, and now Hammerdown, which was acquired by Newfoundland Gold. These are just some images from various producing mines from across the province. I wanted to just give just a short slide to Vale Base Metals, and just to really speak to the significance of the mine expansion, which occurred there from 2018 to 2024. Just under $3 billion US dollars that was spent on that expansion, and at that time, that was Canada's largest underground construction project. Again, really quite substantial. Long Harbour itself, the processing plant, it was really an industrial innovation project, and I don't think we do enough to kind of celebrate the wins. So as an industry, one of the things that we like to do is to be able to lean in more and celebrate those wins, and you help us to tell those stories when we're in the audiences that we are. These are just some fun facts. Largest building in Canada, east of Montreal. But the fact that the hydromet technology creates high purity nickel, copper, and cobalt, but that nickel, it's a premium product which is being bought by the U.S. for defense purposes. The nickel coming out of Indonesia, which really flooded the market that the Chinese bought up and brought down the global price of nickel, can't be used for those defense applications. So again, it just speaks to that industrial innovation, ingenuity, and the expertise, coming out of this, that was here in this, continues to be here in this province, is really quite significant. I'm going to move on because I'm running out of time, but processing facilities, we have 3 in the province. Again, the Long Harbour Nugget Pond and the Pine Cove Mill. I often get asked these sorts of questions when I attend various events on behalf of the province and industry. 3 developing projects according to the provincial list when it comes to projects that are through the environmental assessment. Firefly Metals, Atlas Salt, and the Canada Fluorspar projects. But I also wanted to just give special note to, I don't want to spend too much time because Firefly has already spoken, but the fact that on June 6, 2025, they were released from environmental assessment in just 45 days is really quite substantial. And the fact that this company has been able to come in, and it's been spoken to by 2 of the presenters, by Gus and Crispin yesterday, but the fact that you're adding new value to these resources just speaks again to the potential. And that you can grow that mineral resource estimate by coming in and spending that money by doing things in a more innovative approach. It really, again, speaks to, I think, just the huge potential in the province. That's my own timer. I'm not going to speak at the iron ore industry highlights, but just to say that high purity iron ore is certainly Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador's bread and butter. The project's IOC alone contributes to 2% of that 9.3% to our GDP. It's a significant opportunity for the province for continued growth. It is I can't speak on behalf of government, but it's been said to me, it continues to be a high focus for the province. But when you look on the island portion with this emerging gold district and these high-grade gold discoveries, which have been occurring for the last number of years here in the central area, really speaks to that growth and potential for continued activity for the province. Newfoundland Gold, Fiona noted yesterday, they're working through the environmental assessment process, and they're looking to have that submitted now in Q2 of 2026. And I think we're all aware of their very much active and aggressive drill campaign. I am finishing up, I promise. And then I just want to speak to projects, because it was alluded to in some of the other projects, but Big Ridge Gold and the former Hope Brook Gold Mine, these are projects which are looking now to begin that environmental assessment process, but we don't identify them as a developing project until they're through that process. So, but it's important for even the service and supply sector to be aware of the projects coming in the pipeline. Again, I mentioned the 11 commodities, and I'm going to finish up, but I'm going to just go to one final slide, if I might. Global demand really needs sources like Newfoundland and Labrador. So I just kind of want to summarize some of those high level. We are a top-tier mining jurisdiction. We have multinational companies who've been here for a while with Rio Tinto, Tata, and Vale. Exploration is essential for development. Success obviously depends on that competitive projects, but I also have to note energy and infrastructure. The green steel opportunity in Labrador is a generational opportunity. It's been 70 years, but certainly another lifetime, generational lifetime for Labrador West. But the mineral resources sector continues to be an economic driver and really important in rural and northern communities. And I think as a province, we've been an innovative leader, and certainly the projects that many of you are championing, I hope to, someday to be continuing to talk about these projects in that light. And I'm just going to, my final slide, I promise. Mining is a key pillar to strengthening our economy, making our province more competitive, resilient, and self-reliant. But while mining is often measured in tons and meters, its true measure is the people that make it possible. So it's been a pleasure to be here and to connect with you all. And I'm happy to answer any questions anytime, so please reach out. Thank you.